Hey everybody, it's your girl Angela Kotz, and I am here with Mark Marinaccio with an episode that you don't want to miss. You've seen him all over. You've heard about him with the UFO and Skinwalker Ranch, so stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. All right, everybody, welcome back. We have Mark Marinaccio. How are you doing today?
Hey, Angela, thanks for having me. I'm great.
I know you are super busy. I mean, you're a TV producer, a writer, director, author, entrepreneur. Like, when do you sleep? That's my next question. When do you sleep?
I'll sleep when I retire or after that.
Maybe after. I hear you. So I would like you to tell some of our viewers where they've seen some of the great shows that you have produced and you've directed. So where can they see all these shows?
Sure. Yeah. The last show that I show ran, EP producer, was Alien Encounters Fact or Fiction, which was on Discovery Channel and Max. That was very recent. It finished airing this last couple of months. We did 7 episodes, went out to Roswell, New Mexico, and posted up at a dive bar. And
oh, wow.
And people with really compelling stories of encounters of UFOs, alien abductions, whatnot, would come in and share not only their stories, but their evidence with our hosts. And we would have their evidence analyzed. And the expert hosts would review it and essentially provide a determination as to whether, they saw a UFO or had an alien abduction based on their physical evidence, their credibility, the history, and whatnot. And that was the last project. And then prior to that, the last thing that aired was the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, which
awesome.
I produced season 3 of that show. In between the two, I was actually doing development work for History Channel on a series of my own, out chasing the best picture of a UFO ever.
Whoa, that's a big project.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I started, though, way back when with the OG Ghost Hunters, season 3.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that's where I began. So a lot of, although the UFO alien story has always been my love and my passion, back when I started producing in the early 2000s, you really couldn't make those shows. And the ghost hunting shows, which is also just very much in my blood, the ghost hunting world, were popular. And I had a chance to start out on, my directing and supervising producer in the field career on Ghost Hunters. And that went from Ghost Hunters, multiple seasons. I think I did like 36 episodes, and Ghost Hunters International. And then, just on and on from there. Ghosts, monsters, UFOs, aliens, strange and unexplained.
Oh my gosh. How do you pick one with all of those really cool things?
Find the commonality.
Right. Well, you've told me before you feel that this is all connected. So where did this actually begin? What was your very first project that really sparked this entire love for this paranormal phenomena?
Well, I grew up with it. My mother's sensitive. Back in the 70s, you'd call it just psychic, but medium and sensitive. Yeah, not like practicing for money or anything like that, but it was something that she had that I saw day to day. And my father, while he was working in Manhattan as a businessman, loved science fiction, still does. And so I grew up, watching science fiction, every TV show and movie you can imagine, while my mom was talking about, ghosts and astral projection and aliens. So I never stood a chance.
Family.
Yeah. So I became a storyteller because of my interest in those types of stories, and didn't expect to go down the path of the true investigation of it. But that really led me into becoming an explorer of it more than anything. And then Ghost Hunters was the first, really big project that I got to work on in that way. And this was back when I was really just starting my career as a producer, and I was working on a show, producing and directing on a show called The Ultimate Fighter, which was the MMA mixed martial arts. Yeah, and the same company that produces that show produced Ghost Hunters. And at the end of Ultimate Fighter, a good friend of mine from the show got asked by the company if he would go produce Ghost Hunters. And he said, I'm not messing around with any ghosts, but you should talk to Mark because he's all into that stuff.
There you go.
Yeah. And so they brought me in. And then from there, almost 25-year career has been, almost exclusively in the paranormal and unexplained.
That is incredible. Like 25 years with the
Almost.
unexplained. It's like, man, that takes a lot of guts and a lot of endurance. Because, as you know, when you're investigating, it takes forever to just put together all of these projects. It's like, how did you find your focus when it came to switching over from the ghost hunting to the UFOs?
Well, it goes back to what you mentioned earlier, that it's all related, right? But honestly, if I never have to do another night shoot again, I'd be happy at this point in my life. But it goes back to the interconnectedness of phenomena and anomalous activity. I've always felt sort of intuitively that there was some connection between these different types of phenomena and experiences and encounters, but I didn't have a base in any kind of sciences or even enough of a historical understanding to try to figure out how to connect them. But just the sheer amount and volume of content, stories, and information that I've consumed over the years just was making the connections for me. And whenever I approach a story of the unexplained, it's always the same approach. First of all, I'm a storyteller first, as far as
Right.
my job is to present this to the viewer in a way that they can engage with, understand, and appreciate, whether they like it or whatever.
Absolutely.
So that's my first job. My obligation is to the audience, right, as a storyteller. And also part of that obligation is to understand the story myself, to believe it, to be a part of it in a way that allows me to tell it properly. So whether it's monsters, cryptids, whatever, UFOs, aliens, ghosts, there's something that most likely we don't have a science or scientific language to fully understand or comprehend yet.
True.
There is a location, a situation that has something strange taking place that, again, we don't understand, that is somewhat elusive. But I always would focus on these stories and these places where these experiences are, repeated, right? They happen frequently. Right. They've happened currently or recently, and they happen. They happen quite often.
I was like, is there one behind you? I was like, where are you looking?
Something fell down behind me. It always happens when I do these podcasts. Something strange happens.
See?
So, so I tried to as much focus on, and that's what really made me good and put me in my position of being in demand of this is, I never had to fake anything. I could go in no matter what the show was. If I was brought in or one that I made myself, I said, look, just give me the leeway here and you'll get stuff, because it's not,
absolutely.
It's just a matter of understanding what the pieces are that you have to string together. And so working with the investigators, the team, and they always appreciated having a producer that, knew what he was talking about. I was not just that, but very interested, but I could also really work with them from, with a perspective and a POV to expand and push and go beyond. So
Sure.
It's like, hey, the simplest example is, you go to Skinwalker Ranch and it's like, hey, it looks like, over the course of, 2 seasons of filming, rockets seem to trigger activity. How about you shoot a rocket every single day, and see what happens? Like little things like that. But really with the ghost hunting, and this, you look at the conditions that seem to have been present more times than not during certain encounters, and then what type of encounter it is, and then what's the location, structurally, magnetically, geometrically, whatever, however you want to look at it, geologically. What else? What are the stories? What's the history? What is what was going on when something took place. Was there provoking? Was there, someone alone?
Right.
Like, what? Anyway, you look at all of these different variables. They're just data points, right? From a
Yes.
perspective of it's math, right? We don't fully get it,
Mhm.
but you could say, okay, here's all the variables. Here's all the, that we know that X plus Y plus Z seems to equal Eureka. So now
Exactly.
let's
Yeah.
just keep trying that over and over again until
See, there you
it
go.
produces a result. Um, the biggest thing on Ghost Hunters was, those guys used to always say, if we get like, oh, nothing happened, they're like, ghosts don't show up on cue. And that stuck with me
It's true.
so
Absolutely.
hard because I was like, I don't believe that because they don't, they can't.
Right.
Right.
See?
And that's really what my focus was. So that's why no matter what the paranormal or phenomenological experience or incident or encounter is, let's see how to connect with it, make it happen again or appear again. Because if we can do that,
Yeah.
then you can document, measure, analyze.
Exactly. Making it a scientific process. And I love that you approach it scientifically, you approach it open-mindedly, because a lot of people go in and they're so hardcore being a skeptic that they're not really opening themselves to even having an experience. Like they want to explain everything away when there's a lot of times that things cannot be explained. But
Right.
if you can duplicate, especially with the same variables over and over and over, and then trigger activity, that's amazing. It's almost like you're unlocking the door.
It really is. I mean, and it was funny because Ghost Hunters being the first one of these shows that I did, I was very excited. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm going to get to go and find and see ghosts and get this
Yeah.
evidence." And I just had a slew of bum cases that we started out on where they weren't paranormal. It was something logical and explained,
Oh,
and it bummed me out at first. But the guys again, Jason and Grant, would always say, like, "Look, 90% of what people think is paranormal can be unexplained. So when you
mhm.
have the tools to first look at it from that perspective, and then what's left cannot be explained, then
Yep.
you really are onto something. But you have to take it from that approach and that perspective first. So it's the skepticism. It's such a difficult word, right? Because it should be the scientific method. It should be,
Yes.
not skeptic as far as I will never believe, but it should be healthy enough to say, let's find a way to prove or see that it's real.
100%.
So my enthusiasm for wanting for things to be real, has to be tempered with, I want to know that it is at the end of the
Yes.
day as well, and so does the audience, and they want to know the process and how we arrived at that, how we got there, which made Skinwalker Ranch a very difficult show to produce because of
Imagine.
the massive amount of data and variables and correlative evidence and um, just the different experiences and history that there's not enough time in an episode to
Right.
show how
Right.
A plus B plus C plus D plus E. You can only do like A plus B equals C. And it's always difficult, which is why I always love talking about it after the fact.
Oh, yeah. And that's why you've got 3 seasons because there's so much data you're gathering. Has there been anything that you have said, "Holy crap," like any kind of evidence that you were just kinda like jumping up and down excited that you wanna share with us?
Yeah, I mean, and it's in its fifth season now. So I really, not to toot my own horn, but I'm glad that I was able to help get us into some things in season 3 that really sparked, that or kept the fire alive of the
There you
interest of the
go.
investigation. I won't say sparked it, but every week. I mean, I've been all over the world again, 20 plus years, doing paranormal investigations in some of the creepiest places and most haunted or most active places in the world,
Very
and
nice.
nothing compares to the insane amount of activity that happens on a daily basis at Skinwalker Ranch. And I was
Man.
there for quite some time, for months, and um, every week there was some level of incident that was TV worthy. let's say.
Nice.
And to the point when we came back and went into edit, the editors who were on the previous seasons 1 and 2, when they were being told what was in the story, they were like, wow, that sounds like a great season. We're like, no, that's just one episode.
Oh my
And they're like,
gosh.
wait, what? And
Right.
that's a tribute to the team, Dr. Taylor, Eric Bard, and Team Brandon has, my love for that story and wanting to have set foot on that ranch for 15 years since Knapp's book came out, but
There you
also the progression of the investigation. Right? I mean, they really, the scientific method really allowed them, and the longevity of the show allowed them to build on what happened previously to inform what to do next. And because of that, the results were outstanding. And so we would, regularly be able to trigger some sort of activity.
That's
And
incredible.
the first UFO I saw was, I think, it was like our first or second week filming. And
Really?
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
You were art in 2 weeks? Oh my
I want to say
gosh.
it would have been the first week. I mean, it was crazy because it was broad daylight right there, right in front of us, out of nowhere. And of course, you got all the gear and all the equipment
Whoa.
to say it's
This
not
was
a
not
plane,
at night. This
satellite,
was
anything.
broad daylight? What?
So it was like afternoon, but it was bright. Yeah, just bright
Yeah.
sky. Metallic thing in the distance that has shown up in the past.
Oh,
Um, potentially triggered from shooting rockets into the triangle anomaly.
that's incredible.
But there are, like, I mean, everything. If you watch season 3, every single thing that happened, and there's a lot that didn't make air. There's just no time.
Oh, I can imagine.
Every single thing that happened, was exciting and was
Wow.
surprising, because the biggest thing about the ranch is it never does what you expect. So if you're doing an experiment trying to trigger a certain type of response, you'll get a response, but it may not
Right.
be what you thought it would be, and it just totally blows your mind as how is that even possible. Um,
Right.
the only thing about it is that it's sometimes hard to remember how dangerous the ranch is,
Oh, I
and
can
all
imagine.
the
That
accidents and all the
that was gonna be my
injury.
next question was about these skinwalkers. Is for people who don't know what skinwalkers are, can you just kinda give a brief explanation of what actually is a skinwalker?
Yeah, and it's not it's so this gets back to sort of science of the supernatural in a way, right? So
Mhm.
in indigenous Native American lore and history, the skinwalker is a shape shifting, sort of malevolent witch, medicine man
Oh,
entity that depending on how deep you're going into the stories and the culture of it,
right,
is was or could have been a lot of things. The base, it's something that appears man and wolf, or shape shifts from wolf to man or man to wolf.
oh,
Never
that's
a good
crazy.
thing. Um,
Right,
but there were also stories that, like, oh, the skinwalker was the medicine man that would go live in the cave by himself for a week and come back with the answer to the group's problems. That
oh, that's
sort of
interesting.
well, that historically is a little bit more of what a medicine man is in other cultures. They
Right,
lived away from the community in order to have perspective, right? As an outsider, they could see what was going on with the community in order to understand it and help them. Versus when you're in something,
right.
you don't have the perspective. There are also stories. Well, yeah, that cave you went to was actually a portal. They would travel somewhere, come out
Whoa.
of the cave, and everyone was starving, because they were having a fast, and he would come back with fish, from a cave, and crazy
Oh,
stories like that.
wow.
There were also probably what's most relevant, I think, to Skinwalker Ranch and all connectedness of all anomalous phenomenon, is the thought that um, these skinwalkers could actually get into your head and be in your
Oh,
mind.
man, that's a whole different layer.
Right. And you get to a lot of other, supernatural ideas potentially grounded in quantum mechanics.
Mhm. I think there was one scene from the show that I can recall where I guess they were watching him on the camera and it looked like something had taken him over. And I was like, oh man, I shouldn't be watching this right before bed. Here I am going ghost hunting, not scared of too much, but that Skinwalkers is so multi-layered and there's so much we don't know about it. So I get a little scared because I'm like, what do you mean? It's like he was taken over. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, and I mean the whole Skinwalker, why it's called Skinwalker Ranch, and that whole area is because the Navajo were embattled with the Ute tribe. The Navajo, I believe, they were there, and the Ute tribe came and they fought and they enslaved the Navajo and eventually pushed them out. The Navajo cursed the land.
Oh
And
man.
that's why that it's the path, that property is the path of the Skinwalker, and the mesa is Skinwalker Ridge. And it was George Knapp and 𝗂𝗂𝘁 when they wrote Hunt for the Skinwalker who coined the term Skinwalker Ranch for the name they gave to the ranch that the Shermans lived on. But
Wow.
yeah, so look, I mean, we were out there and there were paw prints of no animal that
Oh,
should be in that area. And
right.
always other stories, we'd see things that were like, this doesn't track with any animals of this size. There's a lot of stories about people seeing giant wolf-like creatures and whatnot. But, I think, again, it gets back to a little bit, what are you seeing or what you are seeing may be specific to you
Yeah.
sometimes. How is your brain interpreting a certain stimuli that it's receiving that's not, the same thing that we always see every day?
Right.
But it is a scary place. I mean, not
Yeah.
when I walked on to set foot on the ranch, I was shocked at how calm and peaceful and quiet it was because of everything that I had
Interesting.
built up in my head about it. It was
Right.
almost a bit unnerving how peaceful and calm it was. It was a bit
I can
still, like
imagine.
it wasn't even moving with the rest of time.
What?
Yeah, it's just very. It's almost like, and I know it's in the middle of sort of nowhere, but it really feels like
Right.
we're not in the world in a way. It's its own. I don't know. It's like its own environment. And
That's pretty cool.
Thomas Whitman, who had the issue with his brain, other guys that showed up that had severe reactions. Travis Taylor with the radiation burns. Jessica Blunt, who lives in the Uinta Valley, who I had on the last show, same kind of potential radiation burns and neurological effects.
Oh no.
And then you look and say, well, okay, here's official government CIA documents where they studied the acute and subacute effects of UAP exposure on biological tissue, and they were doing such
Oh my
studies.
goodness.
They were doing those studies, part of the government-funded program at Skinwalker Ranch after when Robert Bigelow
Really?
had it. Oh yeah, so Robert Bigelow bought the ranch from the Shermans, and he started NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Scientists. Sort of the end of their investigation, the Defense Intelligence Agency came in, and they funded through Senator Harry Reid, who got it passed through. They funded $22 million research into the unexplained phenomena at the ranch. And the end of that program is that research is what led to ATIP, the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program, the UFO program.
Wow.
So, yeah, but the dangers, were documented real. We'd have radiation spikes out of nowhere. But like I said, you get very, giddy with excitement, right? I mean, at least I did, but I'm different, right? Like, I don't get scared. I get excited. I would walk that ranch. If we were at the far end of the ranch doing a night shoot, everyone else would go back to base camp. I'd turn off my headlamp, turn off my walkie, and I would just walk by myself in pitch black across the ranch, hoping to see or experience something. Same thing in all the haunted, like the haunted castles and whatnot, and all the insane asylums. The same thing. I just love that, that experience.
I'm always off by myself somewhere. I did that at Demon's Road on our season 1 finale as I'm walking by myself in the dark, and they're like, how do you see? And I'm like, I can see perfectly fine.
Yeah. It takes a certain type, it takes a certain type to be okay with that and want to do it and come out of it okay, right?
I don't know if we're brave or crazy or both.
Yeah, probably both. But but we forget, again, like that it's a dangerous place. And we were doing towards the end of the season, we were drilling into the mesa, And while
Oh,
drilling into the
man.
mesa, yeah, when the drill hit a solid object, um, there's this whole thing with this 1.65 gigahertz frequency. And anyway, there was this frequency that came through a receiver, was broadcast out of a receiver, which it shouldn't do, over the walkie-talkies.
Mhm.
That was this sound, and when one of the participants, Tom, who lives on the ranch, one of the caretakers,
Mhm.
not Thomas Winterton, he dropped to his knees at Homestead 2 and had like pains in his chest and had to get rushed to the hospital.
Oh,
And
that's scary.
his heart was in like AFib. It was like missing,
Oh,
skipping beats,
no.
or out of arrhythmia, right? And he had to go on a
Wow.
heart monitor. The doctor said it's as if your body was shocked by something electrical. Um,
That
and that was
makes sense.
scary.
Oh
This
my
guy
god.
was, Thomas was a great dude, and always there, and helpful, and just participating and living on the ranch with Candace. And here he is now in the emergency room,
Yeah.
and it's hard. It's hard, but you got to like take a step back and remember this isn't like, you know, this is possibly something that can hurt anyone, and you'll never
Yeah.
know how or why. It's just, if that is a laboratory of particles bouncing around in all sorts of fashions, colliding with each other in a way that we don't understand, and we're standing in the middle of it,
Right.
something's bound to happen
Right.
on the most sort of scientific, mundane, side of things. So it's
Wow.
yeah, exciting, fun, calm, peaceful, until something in opposition to that,
Right.
sort of presents itself.
And you've had so many experiences that you've had to finally just put it all into a book, right? Because I mean, you said this is just there's so much that doesn't even get shown.
Yeah, I think for me, the I tried to get to Skinwalker Ranch for 15 years. Like I said, since I
Mhm.
read the book, I was like, I want to go there. I want to be there. Number one paranormal hotspot on the planet. There's aliens, ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot. It's just like
Wow.
the land of the lost. And I was like, I gotta get there, gotta get there. And I couldn't get
For sure.
access. I mean, obviously, it was under government control for a while, and then
Right.
Brandon Fugel didn't buy it till like 2016, but you couldn't get there. Then even when it's not a playground. You can't get on the ranch. You can get near it and around it.
Right.
Guys like Ryan Skinner did, but I wanted to be like, I was pitching shows. I was like, let's get out there, let's do it. I wanted to be a part of it. But had that happened earlier, I would never have been where I was at a point A in my career where I was asked to go produce it because of what I had done for 15 years prior to that.
Right.
But
Mhm.
also, I was able to experience true science from
Yes.
two of the biggest brains in the world, Eric Bard and Dr. Travis Taylor. I mean, literally, Travis Taylor's a rocket scientist,
That's
and Eric
amazing.
Bard, I think, holds, the amount of patents he holds is insane. But the two, I was able to say the things that I thought and ask the questions that I always wanted to ask and throw the
Oh,
ideas out there. Like, is this crazy? And like find that it's not crazy. And so, having been there for that amount of time, yeah, I'm releasing a book this summer with through G&D Media, called 60 Days on Skinwalker Ranch, which is not only
oh,
about my
cool.
time and my experiences on the ranch while I was there, but that ranch investigation being the final piece. I mean, I wouldn't say final, but being the pivotal piece to the puzzle that I was always trying to put together, which was, I know that at some point, all of this strange and unexplained paranormal, phenomenological, anomalous activity is science we don't have language for.
I
How do we get
agree.
it? How do we know that this is a screw and not a nail if we don't even know what a screwdriver or a hammer looks like, right? I mean,
That makes sense.
so in that, and this is where I really get into the depth of, I mentioned my mom being psychic and mediums, and I know a lot of mediums, consciousness. I spent a lot of time working with near death experience survivors. And I just had this idea that there's a connectedness. What, you know, I thought early on, okay, perhaps we're in places where for a brief moment in time, because of some reason I don't understand about that location, um, there's a brief door or window to another time, space, or place that opens
Right.
up. And either we can see, feel, or physically interact with it. You get into multiple interacting world theory and another
Oh,
dimension
yeah.
theory and multiverse and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing about the ranch, which was unexpected, was the idea that the ranch knows what you're going to do before you do it and prevents you from accomplishing the task. And that was
Oh,
true in from the
man.
most mundane, like just trying to do things from a production standpoint, to the biggest experiment where this rocket going up in a triangle is going to mean everything and it explodes on launch, or it gets pushed
Oh,
off into a new direction, you know?
aw.
And you're just like, what the hell, you know?
Right? You're like, this was planned.
And it's like, what I know is we're putting an incredible amount of thought into these experiments and these processes. Is that related? And if so, how? Without going straight to there's mind reading aliens. Even if there
See,
are mind
it's gonna
reading
go there.
aliens, well, even if they are, whether mind reading aliens, humans, interdimensional beings, or whatever, skinwalkers, how? What's the science behind the mind reading or that connection? And really my work with near-death experience survivors and consciousness and its parallels to quantum entanglement, which were really what got me excited. And again, thinking about ghost hunting and, attachment theory, right?
Yeah.
Something attaches to you, you can't get rid of it. At Skinwalker Ranch, it's called the hitchhiker effect, right? You leave the ranch, but
Oh,
ranch things still happen to you.
really? Off the ranch?
Oh my God, that's a
Oh
whole
my
book
god.
in itself. That is a
See?
legitimate.
I was like, what chapter is that? I'm like,
That's,
oh
I mean, that is
man.
a legit thing. It's a big deal.
I
Um,
have lived with the ghost attachments.
okay,
I can
so
testify to
think
that for
about it
sure.
from a potential of, a quantum physics kind of potential that if there's an entanglement, two things connected at a distance that we can't see what the connection is, how does that connection get broken or severed if we don't even know what it is, right? So
Exactly.
if you connect to something, whether it's the other side or beings or a space, a place, or an action, how, does that connection just exist until you break it? Because again,
Right.
if it's a quantum connection, it doesn't matter where the two of you or these two things are anywhere in the universe. You're still
Yep.
connected because it's at a quantum level. So yeah, you can go home, you're not on the ranch, but ranch stuff still happens to you because you're connected with the phenomena, whatever it is. And so
Yep.
that the time at Skinwalker Ranch and trying to understand the science of that, and the ranch's, sentience is what it was called, the cognitive sentience. What's
Oh,
the
that's
science of it? How
really
does it
cool.
relate to everything else I've ever done and worked in, and what we're now learning about, about the universe and our scientific understanding? Um, is it related? How is it related? And I mentioned this off camera. A huge fan of AI
Mhm.
right now, just because of the massive amount of tools where AI can step in and be the brain that I never had. If I was smart enough, I would have gone
Right.
into being a scientist when I was a kid, but not in the cards for me. But I can use AI like ChatGPT to say, hey, here's all these things that I've experienced, other people have experienced. I think there's a connection. I think it could be this. Is there any
Right.
scientific theory or evidence or proof that could possibly connect these things? And then it's
For
like,
sure.
and then what about historically, or like the best thing as a research tool, I can say to ChatGPT, give me all the places around the world where the similar intelligence, um, you know, the cognitive sentient intelligence seems to be present during phenomenological and anomalous activity in other,
Wow.
paranormal hotspots. And it's like boom, 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 boom. And then it's like connects
Right.
it to like, the Skinwalker and this and that. So I can use it as a research tool and then say, okay, if I believe, this is true, could it be quantum entanglement? And then it will
Right.
spit out, I got to fact check it, right? Because it's still,
Right. Right. Right.
it'll spit out,
Always fact check the AI.
right? But it will spit out very real studies, observations, quotes, materials, and theories that
Wow.
give credence to what I just sort of thought maybe that's
Yeah.
a thing, but that would have no background in understanding if it was or not.
Right.
So in my book, not only do I'll be honest, I try to get a little creepy too, because, it's a creepy story and it's a creepy place, and I don't want people
Oh,
to ever lose
I've
fact
seen,
of
not
that,
personally,
right?
but seen on the show.
If you don't get chills at some of the stories, then you're not seeing the full scope of Skinwalker Ranch, and so I'm trying to do
Exactly.
that. But it's also speaking about how my experiences there, you know, have led me to my theories on what UFOs, ghosts, aliens, monsters are, as far as really a temporary um, interaction with another space, place, or time, which I really believe is more the dimensional, multi-dimensional theory. So, I think that a lot of what we see is dimensional movement, dimensional, interdimensional beings, entities, or interdimensional travel, which allows for time and space and location and distance, as well as being in the same physical space as we are. Quantum tunneling for movement, UAP movements, activity. Their speed, their instant on, instant off. There's a lot of theory. And again, I'm not saying that everything in the sky that's a UAP is um, unexplainable just because we don't have the tools to explain.
Right.
I'm sure there's government or private programs out there that
Oh, for
are
sure.
things. But again, this is technology that we have no basis in understanding how it exists, and that technology would have to be operating from a perspective that is not in line with general understanding of physics, relativistic physics, right? So, is there a new science or a theoretical science or a theory being put into practice that allows for those sorts of things, whether it's anti-gravity, quantum tunneling,
Right.
wormholes, interdimensional travel? Um, you know, uh, so I'm trying not to be too much of a scientific book, but again, it's difficult to not have that in there because I believe that um, my role has always been, and my responsibility has always been, how do I make the unknown relatable?
Yes.
If I
Because
My
there's so
job
many
is to
people that's
take it
had these
and bring it to you, so you
experiences.
can try to understand it and see if it brings value to you.
Yes. Because there's so many people just around the world who have had so many similar experiences, which is why I'm sure you interviewed so many people and you're hearing all these similarities. It can't be people that's all the way, like, let's say, over in Europe, somewhere across the seas having the same experience as someone in Indiana, and they're seeing the same things. This is opening up the eyes. Used to, if you talked about this stuff, people will look at you kind of funny. They're like, sure, you saw a UFO, or sure, you saw this. But now the government is they're not even shameful about it anymore. They're going, oh yeah, we've not only seen them and documented them, but they're even releasing footage, which has been incredible. When the
Right.
government starts going, we're validating the things that you're seeing. Like, that's really been eye-opening to so many people.
And you never know what's information versus misinformation and what the
True,
agenda is,
true.
because throughout history we've had examples of using these sort of information campaigns that are necessary for security, national security,
Right.
or there was the Cold War, or even with Russia or China now. So you don't know what's real now, but what we do know is that really one of the primary reasons why we don't see more footage from the government is nothing to do with what's on the footage, but
Mhm.
the technology used to capture the images in the video. That is top
Oh,
secret
that makes sense.
technology that
That
would
makes sense.
would tip our hat to our enemies or our adversaries as to what our level
Right.
of sophistication is with surveillance.
Exactly.
And
I
that's a
definitely have
big
thought of that as well.
yeah, you cannot. And when we had the guys from the Tic Tac incident from 𝗚𝗵CIH, who were out on the Nimitz and the was it
Mhm.
Roosevelt Nimitz, um, they say we can talk about anything from that day except the means by which we acquired the imagery
Oh,
of the
see?
of the Tic Tacs. Yeah,
Which I totally get that. I always thought
absolutely.
that even as a kid, I was always checking out every single book in the library on ghosts, on, Bigfoot, on everything you could think of, UFOs. I studied that. I mean, hardcore studying that, because I'm like you. I wanted to know the science behind it, because it just seemed, it didn't seem plausible that it couldn't be real. That when so many different people are seeing the same type of objects and having the experiences. So I started becoming more fascinated about the people
Right.
that were taken and
Mhm.
going, because then I'm sitting there, I'm from the country, and it's always like a back roads in the country. So I'm from Dayton, Texas, and there was a back road there that had one of the biggest recordings of where the car had the, what was it you were saying, with the radiation on the top of
Uh-huh.
it, and how they had radiation and
Yep.
had gotten sick. And I was terrified driving down that road going, what if it's me next? It's like, I don't think I'd make it. So
See, I would go
it's,
spend a week camped out on that road.
yeah, I know you would. I know you would. You'd be right there at the tent and you'd be like
Uh,
waiting, and you'd
uh,
probably capture something for sure. So, what do you think draws them, just in your personal experiences, what do you think draws them to want to study us? Because they seem to be very advanced and we're not as advanced. So, why would they study us?
there's I did a lot of work with not just alleged abductees, but generational abductions. A
I've
lot
seen that
of
too.
looking at markers, DNA, Rh factor, um, connecting that to historical accounts and beliefs and folklore and legend of beings and what they looked like or how they presented. There's a lot. I mean, whether or not you're talking aliens, time travelers, or just the government,
Right.
the if you're going to study um, just a planet from a long term perspective, the
Hmm.
way to get information about that planet's development would be the people, because
Right.
we breathe the air, we eat the food. What is going on with us that is a signal as to what is going on with the planet, or there's a lot of theory about um, do they need to adjust us at all to be able to continue to survive on a changing planet,
Right.
um, potentially.
You think they're about to make camp over here, right?
I mean,
They might make camp over here.
well, look, one of the things I would say is like everyone's like, why aren't they here? Why aren't they living here after da da da? Like, first of all, the Earth is a very unstable planet geologically. I mean, between
True.
earthquakes and weather, I mean, it's still shifting, it's moving. Like, if you're an advanced intelligence, you're not going to build somewhere that is good for 100 years. It's got to be good for 1,000,000 years or ten
Right.
thousand years or 100,000 years. And you can't do that anywhere on Earth. There's just too much change. Um,
That's true.
so on the other hand, um, look, we look at cattle mutilations a lot, right? We noticed early
Right.
on a lot of cattle mutilations were missing thyroid, and we know that
Oh, I didn't know that.
the nuclear testing that took place in the early days in the West, they would wait for the wind to be blowing east so it wouldn't blow towards Vegas or whatever with the fallout
Oh,
that
wow.
wind would carry. The radioactive air into pasture lands where cows would graze. They would eat the grass. They would provide milk that went out to the baby boomers who all developed
Right.
thyroid cancer, right? And so,
Oh, yeah.
so if you want to see how, let's just say, radiation is affecting, living things on planets, go get some cows and
Mhm.
check out their thyroids. They're the one eating, they're
That makes
literally
a
eating the
lot of
food off the
sense.
ground. But why is that important, right? And one of
Right.
the more recent theories that I heard, I read about it a while ago, but then there was actually some government discussion about it. um, it's deep, it's crazy as far as like how really the base of knowledge you have to not for it not to sound crazy. But
Right.
what the theory being that the soul or consciousness, however you want it, whichever you want to call it, it's the
Mhm.
same thing. Um, is gives off a field. It's a field like gravity, so it
Right.
actually emits. Right, it's not just something self-contained. It emits, and the more people you have, the larger this field. Right, this larger the spread. Does this have to do with group prayer or group
Right.
meditation and positive thinking towards something with the group? I don't know, but you can see that there's correlation there. But the idea is that as humans, the more of us that there are, the larger this field is. And this field is necessary to continue some form of expansion of the universe. Maybe it's to keep it from contracting, I don't know, or
wow.
expanding or moving, but it's necessary. And so if you're an advanced intelligence whose job is to ensure that the universe continues to expand, or at least not contract, I don't know, then if we're one, in your domain, you want to make sure that we keep living and procreating. Don't care about any of us individually, but as a battery source in some way, we've got to stay, charged. And so you will want to make sure that our bodies can adapt to any changes that either Earth or we as humans throw at ourselves. It's an interesting theory. There's a lot more good depth into it, but I do like that idea because it does two things. It puts a scientific potential on it, but also it removes this idea of good or bad.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a very confusing thing to think the aliens are here simultaneously terrorizing us while also helping us. And it's like, well, why would someone do that? Well, it's because what if your survival is important to the whole? And that's it.
That makes
You're
sense.
not important as an individual. Like if we all suddenly woke up and realized, hey, if we don't live and live well, the universe is going to collapse on itself, we would think potentially a lot less about ourselves as individuals and more about our value to all life.
Like a collective.
And that's not who we are.
Right.
Right? We're not, that's not who we are. We just are that. Some people are, but not everyone. And certainly so. I don't think people would necessarily understand that or want that. And it also would remove this fantasy of they're here to help us. And sure, that could be completely and totally true, but not in the way you think. They're not here to help you as
I'm always picturing that.
Right. It's not about helping you as an individual have a better life. It's about helping to ensure that that people continue to live.
Right.
That's it.
Exactly.
But then you get into religion, and there's a lot of stuff with abductions and Jesus, and you wonder if angels and demons, the devil and God, were good versus bad aliens who each had a different approach to how to make that field happen. Was the devil the one who just wanted us to procreate because the more bodies, the more souls, the better it worked, and and Jesus and God are the ones saying, no, it's not the quantity of souls, it's the quality of souls. So if you have a good soul, it's worth more than 10 bad souls. Who knows? I mean,
see, that opens up a whole new can of worms right there.
Yeah. That's why I said you really have to go deep, and you have to look at like a lot of theology, history, lore, mythology, science, data, but where this comes together is when you look at official government documents, the release of documents that echo some of these same thoughts or investigations, which you find interesting. Now, not to say that all can't be faked by the government as well in an effort.
True.
But what are we going to do? Nothing is ever going to be rock solid. All you can do is say, wouldn't it be great if I think, what if, for a moment?
Mm-hmm. For sure. See, I love your approach. I absolutely do. And this is all covered in your book as well, getting into a lot of this?
Some of it. I mean, this is like, that's...
It's so much. You'll have to write 2 or 3 books for this one.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to focus this one on my time on Skinwalker Ranch. There's a little bit of inside information about, what it was like producing the show and decisions and things that were going on behind the scenes, my personal experiences while I was there, and how I saw what was going on relating to the other things that I've experienced throughout my career.
Very nice. That was going to be actually my next question is, what is it like having these experiences yet being behind the camera? Because when you have to produce a show, a lot of people, even with ghost hunting or with anything, there's so many people that are quick to point out and think that everything is fake because of AI or different things like that. How do you explain to people your experiences and what's it like being behind the camera, experiencing it at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because behind the camera sounds so far away, but no, it's if you see 2 guys on camera, I'm literally the third one right next to them, but you don't see me.
Right.
We're working together on these things as best as we can. My job is just also to make sure it's covered properly and it's explained and
Yes.
it's the information's gotten given to the audience. But no, I mean, look, you hear creepy music, you see jump cuts, and you think, oh, it's all fake because they're employing a style and a tone that
Right.
heightens certain sensitivities, but it's not. I mean, especially the Skinwalker Ranch show. I mean, this is History Channel. You cannot put fake stuff up there. You can't. They will not
Exactly.
allow it. They will check it. And you've got people with just who are credentialed and revered throughout the world. They
Oh
cannot take
yeah.
those risks. They certainly wouldn't want to because there's no value in it. So, well, I don't doubt there's other shows out there that pull some shenanigans. It's not what I do.
Right.
And I've never, like I said, never had to. And I've, worked with some of the best investigators and the best shows and the best locations in the world.
I love it. That's the same with us. We hear it all the time because they're like, "Are you really getting that much activity?" Like we have to cut the lulls because if they were looking at 2 hours of us sitting in the dark and looking at the flashlight, then a lot of people would be bored. So we have to tell people, yes, we add music, but no, nothing is scripted. The ghost activity is real, and usually I'm behind the camera going, like freaking out because I get excited. Like I said, I turned 12 all over again because I go, look, look, look. And we also keep behind caretakers, people who own property. We have other paranormal teams. Like we always want people to see that we've got people verifying because
Right.
maybe it's if something moved, like for example, someone had noticed a shadow walk past and everybody goes, "Why didn't you document that?" And I said, "Because that was our producer walking past." And I was like, "That's not paranormal." Like we document every sound we hear, every noise, if it could be rats, if it could be, 'cause you've gone in these
Mm-hmm.
dark places. You
Mm-hmm.
never know what animal's going to be in there. You don't know what you're going to come across. But I mean, yours is a little scarier. I don't know what I would do if I was faced with a skinwalker. I'm not going to lie. We think that we may have come across one at Demon's Road because that was the
Okay.
first time I heard something, like we heard footsteps surrounding us, and then I heard a baby crying. And this was just like Skinwalker Ranch. It's dead quiet. Nothing is moving. There's not leaves crunching. There's nothing. It's
Right.
eerie. And next thing you know, I hear a baby crying. And that's when you see on the season finale, I go, "What the fuck?" Because I go, "Oh, that's different." Because I
Yeah.
don't know enough about these things. Like I didn't know, is it about to come after me? And you hear
Could
folklores.
be.
Let's see. I don't know. But a baby was crying. That is 100%. And that was something that, of course, our sound is right above us and we're mic'd. So no one else is picking that up, but it's out in the woods crying. And I
Yeah.
went,
That's definitely creepy, but exciting.
"Yes, I know." See, I'm torn. I'm like, "Oh," but I just sat still and I was like, "Oh my gosh." And then you're doing this. Like, how often do you guys get out there and film?
I mean, that show was every day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday for months.
Wow.
That one, you know, and it just depends on the project, what the budget allows. And generally, when I was doing Ghost Hunters, we would film Monday through Friday. We would drive 12 hours on Saturday, have Sunday off and do it again in another location Monday through Friday.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah, so it's not producing television is not for lazy people or the faint of heart
Right.
in any way. It's definitely something you've got to love the amount of time, energy, and commitment you put into it because you are 100% because it's storytelling in an extreme, right? You are
Mhm.
invested and you are giving 100% of yourself to this
Yes.
story. Everything else falls apart around you. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, that's not true of all stories, right? But I think in the type of television that I've made, because of the, it's low budget, so to speak, and it's fast and it's got to get done right away and it's night shoots. I mean, you really just don't have time for much else.
So what do you feel that audiences want to see now? Because a lot of the paranormal shows with the ghost hunting shows have gone to the wayside. And I'm starting to see a lot more interest in the UFOs and a
Yep.
lot more interest in aliens and
Yep.
abductions. What do you feel that people are really looking for next?
I don't think it's any one of those more than others. What the reason why there's more UFO shows is because the networks or studios have decided that's what they want to put the money into. It doesn't mean there's any less ghost hunting going on in the world.
Right.
Or monster hunting. It's just because it's so popular because of the government exposure or the acknowledgments that it's a good time to tell that story.
Yes.
The UFO story. But I don't think that, I really honestly, I've never been able to see any data that really shows me that there's any more of an audience or an interest in one versus the other. Maybe a little bit differences, but you know what I mean? But not on a massive scale. I think UFOs has a more crossover potential in that there's science, there's government, there's history, there's fact, there's data, and there's this sort of supernatural or phenomenological idea. So you get the potential to get interest from more people when it's the UFO alien story than just the ghost hunting story.
Right, because it was one day I saw nothing but ghost shows, and then that went away, and now it's like suddenly I start seeing a lot more with the alien abductions and encounters and different things, and I'm like, but I'll admit though, I love exploring the different aspects of it. I like all of it because especially when you say you find a way to tie it all together, then you go, wow, it's like mind blowing.
Right.
So what's next for you? What do you have going next? I think you have a streaming network. You have, like I said, you're doing so much you don't sleep.
Yeah. I mean, once the book is done, I've been developing out a fast channel, free ad-supported streaming television channel focused on the unexplained that will have content that is a lot user generated, people that are already out there making their own shows, people like yourself, a place, a home for them, as well as original content, and really just a home for enthusiasts and doers in this space, in this world, to be able to just open the app on their smart TV or whatever device and just watch a 24/7 stream of unexplained content.
That's amazing. Streaming's where it's at.
That'll be built off my Strange Story company, so it'll be the Strange Story channel when that launches.
Cool. Well, as soon as you've got that all developed, you send that to us and we'll promote it for sure because we love to support everybody in this world. We want, especially when you start merging the science and you tie it together, because I can't wait to see what you're doing next. That's exciting. Right? Right. Here I am hunting ghosts and I'm like, this guy's on Skinwalker Ranch. I was like, that would be so cool. But you definitely, you earned your stripes before even getting there. Like it took you forever to get there. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I would never have been even asked to do the show had I not done and built what I built prior to it.
It was just 1 second. We're having a little bit of a technical issue. 1 second. I think I might have lost you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
It says it's trying to reconnect.
Can you hear me?
I'm gonna. Yep. Now there we go. Now it's back. We have internet issues. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it happens, right?
Either that or the aliens. See, they're conspiring
No, it's
against.
not your fault. It could be me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
We say you got ranched when your electronics don't work. That's what happens.
Got ranched. It's the same as when we go to these. Well, I appreciate everything. Like I said, these ideas, you can find more in Mark Marinaccio's book coming out. You can find more on all of his shows. Be sure to tune in. We'll post the links to all of this. I want everybody to go and follow all the things he has coming up, and especially when this Fast Network comes up. I can't wait to see what everyone's coming up with their evidence. It's going to be really phenomenal. I think it's going to be game-changing. Just why. But thank you so much for coming on. If anybody likes what we've got going on and you like Mark, don't forget to like and subscribe and to share our content and to keep getting out there and learning more about the paranormal. This has been 𝗓𝗄 with Ghost Hunting Beauties and Mark Marinaccio.
Thanks, Angela.